Hi, this session is on simplifying algebraic fractions when we multiply and divide. Now with our first question, we have done these many times and we can see how we are dividing two terms because we know the vinculum, the line here, means divide. So we'll start off with an easy one that we're used to. And basically starting with the numbers 2 and 10 can be simplified by divided by a factor of 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So if you want to, you can start writing it down. It's up to you how you work this out or write it out. Next, we've got two A's on top and one on the bottom. We know we have to take out our smallest amount. So that's gone. And 2 take away 1 is just 1. So I've got 1A left. So 1A on top. And we know the power 1 can be invisible. And also this one here can now be invisible. Okay, next I've got 6B's on top and 7 on the bottom. We know cross off your smallest amount, it's gone. We know it's really a 1, number 1. But 7 take away 6 is also just 1. So we end up with 1B on the bottom. It's really important that leftovers stay either on top or the bottom, depending on where they're left over. And last of all, we've got 1C on top and 1 on the bottom. Because it's the same amount, we just cross it off and we're done. So you should have had an answer similar to this one. To avoid big spaces, we can write it again. So A over 5B. And that is our final answer. There is nothing else we can simplify. And a way to know whether you have to simplify further is if you see the same letter still on top and bottom, that means you have to keep on simplifying. You should never have the same letter on top, the same variable on top or on the bottom. Okay? And with your numbers, you can actually put your numbers, so just say you had a fraction like this, let's make up anything, and you're running out of time in a test, and you're not sure if you can divide it by 3 or if it can be simplified, just put it in your calculator using your fraction button. Some models have the boxes, some have that A and then BC button, and that shows you that corner symbol. Put it in there and the calculator will actually do it for you. If you're not sure, please let your teacher know because it is a very useful tool, especially when you're running out of time in a test or if you want to double check. Now, when we come to questions like this, you notice that we basically have two fractions that are being multiplied together. And what you can do is multiply them out first and that you end up with one big fraction. But what I want you to do is to always simplify before you multiply, okay? Because sometimes multiplying it out first, it gets very complicated. You end up with large numbers and you can make more mistakes that way. So I'm going to simplify first. Starting with my numbers, I've got 6 up here and a 12 down there that can be simplified, but I can see a 6 down here as well. So I'm just going to cross off my 6's. We know we can simplify anything from top and bottom, whether vertically or diagonally. Next, I've got a 3 up here and a 12. Well, divided by 3, it's just a 1, and 12 divided by 3, so this is 1 as well. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, now if you want to start writing it out, you can. Get your fractions ready. I've got 1 up here so far and a 4, and I've got just 1 and 1. Just in case we don't end up with anything else but a 1, the 1 has to be visible, especially when it's on top. Next, I'll move on to my variables. I've got an A here. Unfortunately, there are no A's on the bottom, so the A is just stuck there. I'll cross it off because I've used it, I've dealt with it. Next, I've got 3 B's up here and 1 B down there, which can be simplified. So I'll cross off my smallest amount, which is that 1B, it's gone. 3 take away 1 is 2. So I'm left with B squared up on this side. And the B's taken care of, or the B squared. And last of all, I've got this T sitting here. No T's on top, so it's stuck on the bottom. And I can rub off all these 1s now because they can be invisible since we have numbers and variables up there as well. And now we will multiply it out. A times B squared is just AB squared. They're different bases, different variables, so we don't add their powers. And 4 times T is just 4T. And guess what? That's it. There is nothing else we can do. So once again with our next question, we've got two fractions that we are multiplying. So first step is simplify before we multiply. Now I can see I've got a 12 on top and a 12 on the bottom. Both the same values goes straight away. Or really a 1, because 12 divided by 12 is 1. Alright, I'll move on to my variables. I've got a b squared up here, so 2b's up here. Now I can see I've got 3b's up here, but we cannot simplify on the same level. So these 2b's and these 3b's, they're both on top. We cannot simplify them. There has to be a b on the bottom. But I can see there are no b's on the bottom, so I cannot simplify my b's, so they just stay there. And then I've got 3c's on top, and I happen to have 10c's on the bottom. So my smallest amount goes, and then 10 take away the 3, because I took away 3c's, 10 take away 3 is just 7. So I now have 7c's on the bottom. And that t down here, do I have any t's on top on either side? No, so the t is stuck there. So let's write out what we have left. On this side, we've got b squared, or b to the power of 2, and on the bottom we've got 7c to the power of 7, times, on this side, nothing changed, we've got b cubed, or b to the power of 3 over t. And now that I can clearly see that what I have is correct, I will multiply it out. Now with this one, just be careful, because up on top we've got the same variable, the same base, b and a b. When we multiply the same bases, we know we have to add their powers. So I have to go 2 plus 3. So b times b, in this case, I'll end up with 2 plus 3, which is 5. B stays the same, over c and t are different, so that we can't add their powers. So we've got c to the power of 7 and t on the bottom. And that's it. There's nothing else we can do. We are done. Now with this question here, we can clearly see we do not have multiplication as our operation. We have division. Now whenever you see division and you're working with fractions, I want you to circle it and put a times on top. You have to change it to times. That's your first thing you have to do. Do not start simplifying or trying to change a fraction. You cannot simplify until you change division to times, okay? Just get into that habit, because then otherwise you'll make a mistake. And to do that, you go to the right-hand side, to this fraction here, and we have to switch the numerator and the denominator, or flip them. So we end up with x over t. This side stays the same. We now have times, switch these or flip them, t over x. And now we can just simplify as we've normally been doing, anything from the top and bottom. And this one looks pretty straightforward, because I've got one x on top and one down here, just they're gone, same thing. I've got a t on top and the same thing on the bottom, and guess what, it's all gone. Now we're really dividing by the same numbers or variables, so it's all 1, and 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 divided by 1, your answer is just 1. That's how easy it is. So I want you to try this next question yourself before you watch me do it. Now, straight away, I see fractions, I see division, circle it, change it to times by flipping this side here. You can't go wrong by doing that every single time. So my first step, I write it down here, 6x squared over 5t. I now have times. I flip this, so t is now on top, over 6x to the power of 10. And now all I'm going to do is simplify before I multiply. We're pretty good at this by now. So I've got, just work with one thing at a time. 6 up here. Let's see my numbers down here. I've got a 5 here. 6 and 5 can't be simplified, but 6 and 6 can. They're the same thing, so my 6's are gone. 6 divided by 6 is just 1. Next, I'll move on to my x's. So I've got 2 x's on top. Do you see any x's on the bottom? There's none down here, but yes, there are 10 here. So we've got 2 on top and 10 on the bottom. Cross off your smallest amount, it's gone. But because we took away 2 from the top, we have to take away 2 from the bottom. And 10 take away 2 is just 8. So we have x to the power of 8 on the bottom. So if you want to start, and this is the one here, if you want to start writing it out, because it's starting to look a little bit messy, you can. So I've got 1 times 1 on top, which is just 1 on this side. And down here I've got, the 6 is gone, so I've got 1 times and then x to the power of 8, which is there. So that's what's left over, okay? Please don't let your working out confuse you. And now I've got to look at my t's. I've got a t up here and a t down there. Because they're the same thing, guess what? It's gone. But don't forget that when we cross it off, it's really a 1, so don't forget to put a 1 up there as well. And down here, yes, I've got a 1, but I've also got a 5. There are no more numbers above to simplify with the 5. So the 5 is just stuck down there. Or 5 times 1 is 5. And finally, multiply it out. Don't forget there's a 1 on top. 1 times 1 is 1 over 5 times x to the power of 8 is 5x to the power of 8. And that's it. All right, the next few questions that we're doing are going to be more challenge questions. So if you're in the 8A group, the advanced group, you have to watch this. Continue watching. If you're in 8B group and you are challenged enough, you can stop watching the session. But if you want to go further, please go ahead. Okay, so the next question that we'll be doing will now involve brackets. Now, at first, this confuses students just looking at it, but eventually it'll make sense. Now, sometimes questions don't actually put brackets for you. For example, I could have written this question like this: x plus 3 over x plus 2. It's the exact same thing, okay? But the reason why you should put brackets is to make sure, or so it's clear that the x plus 3 cannot be separated. They are a number. And the same with x plus 2. You can't separate them. So it's good to have brackets there. So if a question is given to you without brackets, put it in yourself. And you'll see what I mean a bit better later on. Now, x plus 3 on top is just a number. For example, and same at the bottom. If I told you if x is, I don't know, nice and easy. If x is 1, just say you knew x was 1. Well, if I submit it up here, I'd have 1 plus 3, which is 4, over. And if x was 1 here, 1 plus 2 is just 3. And I end up with this fraction here. And can I simplify this fraction, the 4 and 3? No, they can't be simplified. Okay, so I just turn it into a mixed fraction and we're done. I want you to realize that x plus 3 is just a number. And the same with x plus 2. The problem is we don't actually know what x is. So to simplify this, if you have the exact same thing on top and bottom, just cross it off. Now, do we have the exact same thing here? Unfortunately, we don't. We've got x plus 3 on top and then x plus 2 on the bottom. But if I did this, so my question wasn't finished yet, x plus 2, and I'll put x minus 3. So that's our question 6 now. Can I now simplify something? Yes, we can. I've got x plus 2 on the bottom and x plus 2 on the top. And don't forget there's an invisible power 1 outside the brackets. There's always powers everywhere. And because we have 1 on top and 1 on the bottom, we just cross off x plus 2. And it's really just a whole number 1. Now be careful with the x plus 3. X plus 3 is not the same as x take away 3. So we can't cross them off. So we now multiply them out. X plus 3 times 1 is just x plus 3 over 1 times x minus 3 is x minus 3. You don't have to put brackets, but if you want to, your final answer, you can. And that's it. There's nothing else we can do to simplify. So when you see brackets, just all you're going to do is do the exact same thing. If it's the exact same thing in the brackets inside, then you can cancel. Now with question 7, you notice we now have numbers, so values outside the brackets, okay? And in the brackets, let's see, first of all, do we have the same thing? I've got x plus 1 on top and x plus 3 on the bottom. Unfortunately, we can't simplify that, okay? Now, I forgot to mention, please, with questions like this, don't expand it. Don't go 6 times x and 6 times 1 and 8 times x. First, see if you can simplify anything, okay? And if you can't, you just leave it. So we've got 6 and 8 now. Because they're both numbers on the outside, we can simplify them. Remember, they're joined to the brackets by times, okay? There's no plus or take away separating them. So we can now simplify them. So 6 and 8, if I divide them both by 2, by a factor of 2, we end up with 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we end up with 3 bracket x plus 1 over 4 bracket x plus 3. And that's your answer. There's nothing else you can do. Don't expand these ones because we want them in factorized form. Because remember, when we add and subtract fractions, it's a bit different. But here we're not doing that. We're just simplifying. And just stop there. Now with our next one, it's starting to look a little bit more tricky, but it's just as easy. All right, so first of all, check in the brackets, do we have the same thing? X plus 3, yes, and x plus 3. So yes, they're both the same thing. They can be simplified. But you notice now we've got powers. We've got 5 up here and a 2 down there. And it's exactly the same thing as this. If I had x to the power of 5 over x to the power of 2, we know we can simplify these two. We've got 5 x's on top and 2 on the bottom. Cross off the smallest amount, becomes a 1. 5 take away 2 is just 3. So I end up with x to the power of 3 over 1, which equals x to the power of 3. So we know how to do these ones. This is the exact same thing. But instead of just an x, we've got x plus 3. And we should end up with an answer similar to this. Okay? So now, let's do the same thing. I've got 2 x plus 3's on the bottom. My smallest amount can go. It's really a 1. And 5 take away 2 is just the power 3. So I'm left with x plus 3 to the power of 3 over 1, just like down here, x to the power of 3 over 1, which equals x plus 3 to the power of 3. And we're done. Before we continue, I just want to make sure you understand what we mean by power 2. For example, if I have x squared, I know this is saying x times x, which is x squared. This is the exact same thing. This is saying x plus 1 times x plus 1. Exact same thing. But when we have brackets, the times can actually be invisible. So I can write this way, x plus 1 bracket and then bracket x plus 1. So remember, when we have brackets, the multiplication symbol is actually invisible. Just like if I had 2 bracket and then bracket 2, that is saying 2 times 2, which is 4. So when you have brackets sitting together, you know that there's an invisible times in between them. Okay? So I want you to have a go at this one and then watch how I do it in case you got stuck. All right, so with this one here, we're multiplying 2 different fractions. That's fine. We'll simplify before we multiply. Start with our numbers on the outside of the brackets. I've got a 5 outside and a 25 out here. I can simplify 5 and 25. Okay, so 5 divided by 5 is just 1. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. If you want to start writing it out, you can. It's up to you. So I've got a 5 down here, and so far a 1 there, which may become invisible. Now, I've got x plus 3 in brackets on top. Do I have any x plus 3's in brackets on the bottom? Yes, I do. Straight down here. Gone. Same thing, same amount, gone. So it's really 1 now over 1. So I'm left with a 1 on top and a 1 on the bottom. I'll put my 1 in the middle so it looks a little bit neater. There we go. Now on this side here, I've got x plus 7 on top and x minus 7 on the bottom. Unfortunately, they almost look the same, but they're not because we're adding here and subtracting down here. So x plus 7 is stuck on top as well as the x minus 7. Don't forget the 5 is out there. That is saying 5 times x minus 7. So our final answer is, multiply it out, 1 times x plus 7 is just, I'll rub this off, I don't really need it, is x plus 7 over, and then there was a 1 times that, which is just 5 bracket x minus 7. And guess what? We're done. There's nothing else we can simplify. Now this question here was actually from a test, your test, so hopefully it'll make more sense now if you didn't get it right. Now with this one here, it's starting to look more complicated, but it's just as easy. Just do this exact same thing that we've been doing. Start with one thing at a time, and I'll start with my numbers on the outside. I've got an 8 here. Are there any numbers on the bottom that I can simplify with 8? 3 is no good, but 2, yes. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. That 3 down here, there are no more numbers on top for it to be simplified with, so 3 is just stuck there. So I'll start writing it out to avoid it getting messy. So far I've got a 4 and a 1 down here. Okay, now in these brackets here, I've got x plus 5, and there's 5 of them up top. Do you see any x plus 5s on the bottom in brackets? Yes, we do. We've got 3 down here. So I've got to cross off my smallest amount. It's gone, just a 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. I already have a 1 down here. So The only number down here now is just a 1. Now I must do the same thing to the top. 5 take away 3 is 2. So I've got x plus 5 squared. There's 2 of those there. All right, and I'm going to cross it off completely just to say I've dealt with it. Next, I'll go up here. I've got x plus 7. There's 2 of them up here. Do you see any x plus 7s on the bottom? Yes, we have. There's 1 here. Now, this might confuse you, this part here. Don't forget there's an invisible times in between the x plus 7 and the x plus 3. So we have 1 x plus 7 and we have 1 x plus 3. There's 1 of each there, and they look like they're stuck together, but there's actually a times in between them. So I've got 1 down here and 2 up there, x plus 7s. So cross off your smallest amount, which is x plus 7, just 1. And 2 take away 1 is 1. So up here, I'm left with x plus 7. Okay? So don't forget, there's an invisible times here. We have 1 x plus 7 and 1 x plus 3. Now, oh, I forgot to write my 3 that's sitting here from before. The 3 is taken care of. Now I've got, and this is gone as well. So now I'm left with x plus 3, just 1. There's no more x plus 3s on top. So the x plus 3, I just write it down there. Okay? Now, our final step is to multiply this out. And this part might confuse some of you. So just watch how it actually works. Remember, if we have brackets sitting together, the times is invisible. So what I can do here is, we know order doesn't matter. So if you write it like this, it's fine. We've got bracket x plus 5 squared. Times is invisible. What's up here? X plus 7. So that times is invisible. Over 3, and in bracket x plus 3. Times 1, we know it's the same thing. And that would be your final answer. If you had x plus 7 first, okay, that's fine as well. But always have your whole numbers, in this case 4 and 3, please make sure they're written first. Okay, and outside the bracket. And that's it. Now, this will be our last question. This is also from your test. Now, the first thing is we've got division. Forget about anything else. We've got to turn it to times or change it to times by flipping these 2 brackets. That is our first step. So, to save space, I'm going to rub this off because I haven't got much room, but you've got this on your paper anyway. So, times, and instead of x plus 3 on top, I'll have x minus 1 and change the bottom as well. So I've got x minus 1 on top now and x plus 3 on the bottom. So I've just flipped it. Okay, and you've got it on your paper. Now that we have times, all we're going to do is simplify before we multiply. So starting with our numbers on the outside, in this case 5, there are no numbers out there anywhere else on the bottom, so 5 is stuck there. All right, now you can notice that everything is to the power of 1. We have 1 of everything on top and bottom. So that makes it a little bit easier. So I've got x plus 3 on top. Do you see any x plus 3s on the bottom? Yes. So gone, gone. It's the same amount, it's just gone. Earlier 1 and a 1. Let's have a look at x minus 1. Do you see any x minus 1s on the bottom? Now be careful, this is not x minus 1, it's x plus 1. I can't cross them off, so they're both stuck there. And x minus 5, there are no x minus 5s on top, so it's stuck there as well. So our answer will be this. 5 times x minus 1. 5 times is now invisible, x minus 1. Over, just write it out again. X plus 1, we know there's an invisible times, x minus 5. And that times 1 is the same thing. Don't expand this. These questions you don't expand. You just stop there. And that's your final answer.